Right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things happening in the EPL from a bench perspective. And I'm your host, Ben, and this is supposed to be a midweek show, and it is the end of the week again. But I did want to get this through because this coming up weekend is the big one, as they say. We have Arsenal and City. And before that, on Saturday, we have a pretty big contest for Liverpool, who are leading the table. Though Arsenal are still nipping at their heels with a very informed Bournemouth side, and I don't think I've lost in something like 8 or 9 games coming into this. And I am going to spend like pretty much the bulk of this on that Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest game that happened last week because uh, Bournemouth are doing something that is a little bit different than what we're used to seeing, and that's going to be a bit of a theme that I wanna highlight. It is unique to seeing this, and it seems I mentioned how a few episodes in, uh, it feels like we're seeing a bit of a change in the game a little bit, and what I mean by that is we've gone from uh, a couple of sides that were very they tried to, the Klopp era, and then you've had, I guess you could say, the Pep Man City era. You've had teams that have tried to be very pragmatic and sitting in a deep block, waiting to try to counter. We've seen some of that. I think we're seeing almost a systemless era, I guess you can say, where you're seeing unpredictability back into the game, and I'm gonna definitely touch on this with Bournemouth. I feel like Liverpool kind of play the same way, at least under Arne Slot, and it's going to be really exciting to see these two teams kind of marry each other a little bit. Before that, I will kind of run down what happened last week. Liverpool were comfortable. I mean, Ipswich having to face Man City and then Liverpool, we're not really competitive, but they're not gonna what happens. Their fate in the league is not gonna be decided on what they do versus in those two teams. It is concerning that they are shipping a lot of goals, and for the most part, it's been pretty easy. They have spent some money though. They brought in Jaden Philligan of Aston Villa. He wasn't really working out for Villa. He seemed like a pretty raw talent, but probably the more exciting name that they brought in is Julio Enciso of Brighton, who before his injury a year ago was up there as one of the more kind of exciting, free flowing, creative kind of players who has a very good way to find some space and get a shot off. He has a very good shot on him as well. Uh, and the kind of exciting thing here is it'll be interesting to see how he's used because if they can find a way to play him and still play, maybe you move Amari Hutchinson maybe more on the wing, you're not going to just be able to focus on Delap, and that's kind of been the issue for at least these last two games. Is if you take Delap out of the equation, Ipswich don't really have a way to move to progress the ball forward. And then their defense has been a little suspect as well. I think they made another signing there as well. I think it's they brought in Godfrey, formerly of Everton. Don't necessarily know how well that will work out, but at least it's a body. And right now they are struggling a little bit at the back. But again, a couple of weeks ago they did all right versus Arsenal and they did pretty good versus Chelsea. So it's just it's that's how fast things can turn. It's not the end of the world. They also I believe got a 2-2 draw versus Fulham recently as well. So we'll see if they can get back to winning ways. I think they're still safe in the table at least for the moment. But there's like four, there's like five teams or so in that bottom, at least in that bottom five, there are at least three teams or so within a point of each other, within being that last in the relegation spot. So that's where we are with Ipswich. With Arsenal, gave their fans hell again, is what I have. This time there is a hero for them, and it's actually one of the signings from the summer that last week I said they probably shouldn't have made. So I don't really know what I'm talking about in Calafiori. In my defense, I was talking about how you've got so many left backs here. You've got you're playing Lewis Skelly every week, even when Calafiori is available, and as we saw in this game, that kind of backfired a little bit. But I was just wondering if you're gonna be so stacked at left back, you still have Zinchenko. You haven't get moved off him. You still have Tierney. You have this Lewis Skelly guy that I think is probably going to be a midfielder when he eventually moves either later on in his career or when he leaves to join another club, it doesn't really feel like a left back, in my opinion. Just kind of even when he plays left back, he's mostly playing through the middle in midfield, anyways. But I was just thinking, you bring in Calafiore, or you also have Timber there that can also either play on left back or right back. You didn't know, Ben White was going to get hurt, so I was just thinking if you didn't have enough capital to spend on multiple positions, the glaring weakness was at striker, and you had 70 million or 70 million, pounds or euros or whatever it was, and you spent it on a left back. Now it is a luxury left back, and when on his day, he is exceptional. But he did have an injury, history when he was with Bologna, so you knew about that. He was spectacular in the Euros for Italy as well. I liked the signing when it happened, so I'm gonna, sound like a little bit of a hypocrite, but it was just like you imagine if Arsenal were going to spend, they would have at least addressed the striker position. They're still in one of those kind of limbo modes. Will they or won't they as we reach the end of another transfer window? It looks like they just sent out a bid for Ollie Watkins, which is weird to me because they have to know that's not going to work out. And then even after that, Aston Villa just apparently have sold John Duran, so they're not going to lose both of their strikers when they've qualified for the next round in Champions League, and they still have a chance to get another top four spot. So Aston Villa is not going to just trash their season, regardless of how much they could recoup by selling Ollie Watkins. That said, to me, if you're an Arsenal fan, I don't know if you like hearing this because I feel. Personally, it feels like a PR stunt, a little bit. If there is money to spend now, why are you only waiting now, and why are you doing it for a player that you probably figured out was not going to be available, at least for this summer? Maybe next summer you go for Ollie Watkins or not. They put out feelers for Sesko, who they wanted supposedly last summer, and they've done something similar. This transfer window, they and Leipzig isn't going to deal him away, at least now. It's hard to always do things in January. Clubs know that you're desperate, and so that if you're high tight on finances, uh, puts you in a troubling position. Anyways, now there have been strikers that have moved. This transfer window. I think Colin Muani was moved somewhere in Italy, maybe even Juventus for a loan. You're paying expensive wages, but Marcus Rashford is maybe still available to be moved. We'll see if Arsenal get something done or not. In the end, if they have what they have, it's still going to be enough to at least you'll give Liverpool and their fans a bit of a scare. We'll see what they do versus Man City. They have a chance to really stake a claim, or if Man City, beat them this coming weekend, they maybe the gap will be too far. It'll be very interesting to see how Liverpool handle with Bournemouth as well. So like the title race could look entirely different from where we sit next episode. So that's kind of where we are with that. As far as the game, Lewis Skelly, he gets the red card, and it's one of those where it's not only harsh, it's the wrong decision in my opinion. Now I've seen some kind of stills that have suggested, well, it is maybe studs high. You understand he's just going for the trip. It's supposed to be a cynical foul. It's supposed to be just like one of those, but it is studs high, and it is studs on the ankle high. The only thing I'll say about that is there's no way Michael Oliver saw that in real time, and the reason why it was upheld is because the VAR people were able to do the freeze frame, and they say, oh, it's not really the wrong call. So I think Michael Oliver got lucky. I think that's one of those situations where you should have at least asked him to go to the monitor, because I don't think they did that. So they did. They just upheld the call. And well, I'm in their corner, Arsenal fans' corner, in saying I don't think it was the right call. But apparently Michael Oliver has experienced a lot of really hateful, not just hateful messages. Apparently pretty bad threats against his family and whatnot. So it's caused quite a stir. And you don't necessarily want to see that, but you also want to see the game refs correctly. I guess I can put it that way. When you have, I want to say it shouldn't be just on one ref's call. especially when you have multiple, doing this VAR stuff, this video review stuff. It's supposed to kind of take mistakes like this out of the game. There's supposed to be chances for, a mulligans or a redo, and we should instead of refs, having their ego hurt, where maybe they feel, they find out they got the call wrong in real time. They should embrace actually. Well, maybe I got it wrong because I couldn't really see from the right angle, but with the better lens, with the freeze frame, with the better view, now I can see it was a different call. Or I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but that to me I think should be the next kind of process in this, in my opinion. But it doesn't really matter because Wolves kind of make the boo boo themselves with Yao Gomez, who first probably could have gotten sent off even before this, so he's already on a yellow for dissent. And then early in the second half, it's like the first minute in the second half, he gets caught kicking the ball away. And Arsenal fans definitely know that that's a yellow because that's how Declan Rice got sent off for one of those reds. But it doesn't really matter because while Yao Gomez was given a second or even a third chance, he doesn't get a fourth, and he goes in for a very bad challenge. It's one of those where I think it's not maybe the best touch, and he's just sticking a leg out trying to win the ball back, and he just goes all over on top of Timber's foot, and that's pretty high too. That's arguably a straight red as well, but at least it's a for sure yellow, and he was it's the second one, and he's sent off, and then Arsenal were able to get a pretty good attack going, where I think it's Martinelli who gets the ball, and it's a pretty good cross into the box, and he's trying to go for Kai Havertz. And one of the things you saw in this game is Kai Havertz actually doing a pretty good job to be in the box and to be a target man. Now, it wasn't always coming off. He actually had a couple really bad misses, but he was at least getting his head onto the ball. And the crossing from Martinelli, the crossing from Trossard, we started to see that from the last couple of weeks, where Trossard is getting the ball, and he's doing a pretty good job to actually be a playmaker with his left foot. He did a cross versus I think it was Aston Villa, and I think he was responsible for the goal for Spurs, maybe even the first one. So you're starting to see creation a little bit there. Arsenal are having to play differently with Saka being out. In this game, they didn't have Odegaard as well, so it was interesting to see almost Declan Rice used in a different position. We didn't see Thomas Partey, at right back, like we saw versus Aston Villa. So Arsenal were not necessarily at full strength, but probably in a better strength than they had been in a little bit. Declan Rice in that kind of advanced role wasn't bad. He doesn't really. He's not going to necessarily beat you with a pass to death, but he's actually pretty good with ball carrying. And the note I had is maybe Declan Rice, maybe his best game, at least in the near memory. He was very good, especially when Arsenal went down a man. The energy that he had was next level. When Calafiori came on in the to start the second half, he was very good at just being able to play high and to and to be really good on the ball. The Arsenal were moving the ball better than Wolves with 10 men. Wolves, I think, also played a little bit on the role in this when they're playing a team that's down a man, and they're still playing with a back three, and they're not able to get their wing backs nearly as high up as probably they should have. It was quite comfortable a little bit for Arsenal. And one thing that I want to say before I end up moving on this is it is good for Arteta here because there've been 3 or 4 games now where Arsenal have maybe gotten maybe not gotten the best of the luck. Some of these I think you could argue were the right calls for the red cards, but they've had 3 or 4 games now with red cards where they've dropped points in every single game. And this was kind of the first time where Arteta didn't just cower a little bit. He didn't go into a shadow. He didn't try to play super defensive. He played with Gabriel and Saliba really, really high up, and basically it was only 2 men back there. And if Wolves had any kind of pace at all to their attack, they would have been able to hurt that. But what happened is early in the game, I think it's Larson went off injured, and then after they didn't really have any, they have Wang, but Gabriel and Saliba are not really slouches, and just Wolves weren't really able to get in behind at all. So it basically allowed Arsenal to play as high up as possible, and because Wolves are just playing with 3 center backs back there, and you've got Kai Havertz, who's not really a striker. He usually likes running into midfield to collect the ball. Anyways, Arsenal did not. It didn't feel like Arsenal were actually down a man, and they were actually the team that was able to somewhat controlled the game, even in the second half, even before Wolves went down to join them with the 10. So uh, braver on the ball. They braver in their press, and they got Havertz some good looks even before the goal. And you can say that it's a cross that's meant for Havertz, and Havertz is doing just a job to be in the box, be a presence, and then after a header that just tries to clear the ball away, it's not good enough, and Calafiore makes a run into the box and able to get on the rebound. It's a really nice hit by Calafiore as well, who was Lewis Skelly's replacement. So that was I guess fitting a little bit there as well. I figured you know Lewis Skelly is the kid. Well, I don't really understand if you've got people that are available on the bench, they should probably play over him. But nonetheless, it doesn't end up hurting them, and I think they actually had the red card rescinded. So will Arsenal will somewhat be full strength. You can you'll put quotes on that for the Man City game. I mentioned how Arsenal were able to play super aggressive with the back line. Well, they had Saliba back and they had Gabriel back and they had Saliba, they did not have for Aston Villa, and obviously he makes a pretty big difference. So Arsenal fans, that can be a turning point in their season. We'll have to see if they are able to carry it on or not. Speaking of the big game this weekend, Man City were also comfortable in their game despite the start at Chelsea's expense. So a couple debuts here. We have one for this young center back from Uzbekistan, and not the best start for him. But I think frankly, one of those where if you watched after maybe the first 8 minutes or 10 minutes or so, I thought he rebounded quite well. I thought he handled Chelsea's attack. I think there was another moment where so to start off, he has I think he gets caught in two minds, and he's basically heading the ball back to a keeper, and he heads it back into the ground. Jackson's able to pounce on it, and they're able to just basically get a tap in. A little bit after that, he has a pretty poor pass and poor turnover that immediately leads to Chelsea having another counterattack, and he goes to ground and catches Palmer, so he gets a yellow card. I think he has another moment when he gives the ball away, but after that, so it took a little while for him to warm up to the game. I thought he did pretty well. There was a moment when there was I think Jackson or Carl Palmer was able to get in behind where should have been the second goal for Chelsea, and it's either a poor mistake by Palmer or it's a poor mistake by Jackson. I think you could maybe blame both. Palmer doesn't give Jackson the best ball, and I think Jackson needs to just suck it up and take this with his left foot when he gets the chance. But uh, the young center back from Uzbekistan, Kushinov, does do well to at least read it. He runs back, and then he's able to get a pretty big block, and he had a couple of blocks, after that. He had some pretty good recovery pace. So the other thing that happened here is City saw that okay, that this kid is not going to be someone that we want to give the ball to a whole lot. So what we saw was Bernardo Silva came back, and he dropped in, and it gave City a lot of control after that. And so we saw a different role for Bernardo Silva. We saw a different role for this young center back, who basically his role was to just be the legs, essentially, almost like a Kyle Walker replacement in a sense, but playing as the center back. Uh, we saw Akanji as his partner, and then we saw Gvardiol used actually a little bit more differently than we had seen. It wasn't him playing in a back three. It wasn't him playing at center back either. He was to be the width and to actually try to get forward a little bit. And that's basically what happened. City catch Chelsea by both using Gvardiol, being able to get forward, a couple runs from out wide, running inside to cause some trouble, and also from Mateus Nunes on the other side. And the last time we saw Mateus Nunes, he was not doing that well as a fullback versus PSG. But Barcola is not Jadon Sancho, and Jadon Sancho did not really one time try to take on Mateus Nunes. So Nunes felt he had license to really go forward and to be an outlet. And I think really the first goal happens that way, where Mateus Nunes gets a run in behind as we get to the 20th, 30th minute or so in the game. Chelsea are sitting back. Chelsea's press is just almost non-existent, and they're also playing a somewhat high line with their defense, and they don't mark, they don't get any ball pressure on Gundogan or Kovacic, whoever's the ball over the top. And Mateus Nunes is just in behind, gets the ball, and he's 1v1 with the goalkeeper. The keeper makes that save, but then Gvardiol is right there to finish with the with the putback. It felt like Chelsea started okay for the first 10 minutes, but then City really did take over. I mentioned how there was a debut for Kushyanov. There was also a debut for Omar Marmoush of Frankfurt. This Egyptian striker who looks very very interesting. Looks like a not really a Pep kind of signing, just someone that has a lot of pace to him and a lot of willingness to make a lot of runs without the ball. And the interesting thing about this game with Chelsea is, for the most part, City were trying to do this. City were actually trying to reward those runs without the ball. They were trying to actually be direct, and that's actually how Man City beat Chelsea in the second half as well. They weren't just trying to do this, 600 passes, side by side and just control the game to choke it off. No, they were looking to actually get forward as quickly as possible, almost in a way as a decoy to actually get people to get Chelsea to play as high a line as possible with their back line, and to give Ederson the ball, and then for him to just launch it. And we actually see that for a couple of these moments, even before the second goal happens, where Chelsea were given a warning sign. That one, I think there was a moment where I think Sanchez is able to make that save, but Sanchez doesn't do well for the second. So I mentioned how there was a Chelsea got a little bit of a warning shot that that Ederson can do this ball over the top and find Holland if it, if they want to, and they basically do it again, basically 30 seconds or so after the warning shot. They do it again, and this time Levitt Colwell, or I think it's Chalba. Chalba can't do anything with it, and then Sanchez runs out, and he's in no man's land. There are a number of people to blame here. Sanchez can't run where he is, but Chalba, I think, needs to do better too. They saw that Levitt Colwell couldn't handle Holland, so they kind of moved Chalba over in that second half. That didn't work out either. Not a lot of people can stick on Holland, to be fair, but it's just kind of one of those things where y- y- they need to have a little bit better protection than they did. Man City just saw that Chelsea were vulnerable, and they get it that way. And then in the third goal happens where it's similar, where Ederson goes long. It's kind of a mid-range pass here. He's able to find Kevin De Bruyne, who had just come on. De Bruyne flicks a header to Holland, and Holland does really well to hold the ball up and to play Foden, making a run in behind him, and then Foden is able to finish that 1v1. So that was interesting. Like the thing that I was surprised about is in that PSG game that City were just trying to recover from. Ederson probably had one of his worst days on the ball. He could not do anything long, and he couldn't do anything actually short or intermediate. Um, but I guess PSG have center backs that someone like a Paco, someone that Marquinhos, maybe we're doing a better job to handle Holland in that deep line, and we're doing a much better job to at least put some pressure on Ederson. They had Gonzalo Ramos, or they had Dembele or Bacola, running their socks off to make Ederson have to be under pressure. Chelsea, by comparison, we're not doing that. They whether it was Carl Palmer or whether it was Jackson, it would be token pressure at best, but really it wouldn't be anywhere. And you give Ederson time, and Ederson can beat you. We have seen that. So that's kind of where we are. I'll probably spend a little bit more time, actually, detailing that game, but I'm not going to necessarily do what I normally do for the others. And then we have the one I'm probably going to lead off is with Bournemouth. Bournemouth and welcome Nottingham Forest to their ground, and took a very defensive team and walloped them. And I will get started with that game after I do this. Finish up with the other roundup. Everton continue their joy with their new manager bump, with David Moyes' effect in full action. And they win despite being outshot. I think it was 17-3, 70% of the ball to Brighton. But it doesn't matter because they get a PK. The PK was controversial in my opinion. I don't really know if I would have upheld that. I feel like he's kind of pushed. I think it's I think it's Veltman, who it's almost like kind of shouldered off the ball, and then his hand kind of touches the ball. The ball's going out too. It's not necessarily like the ball was going to head towards goal for a scoring opportunity. I thought it was harsh, but they don't. The VAR people or the video review people didn't change it, and a big month for Ndiaye, who was able to to convert the PK. So I mean, Brighton to be fair, Brighton did really create a whole. They have 17 shots, but not a whole lot was on target. The XG for the game was very low. So Everton have become very hard to break down and beat. And one of the things that Moyes has done is he's brought in, I think his name is O'Brien, to almost kind of makeshift, and not necessarily a back three per se, but it's basically three center backs. And then Mikalenko does plays a little bit more advanced a little bit. It does feel like they're a little bit more secure. In their quote unquote rest defense, it feels like ever since that Aston Villa game where Ollie Watkins was able to get behind for fun, O'Brien has come in and changed things up. 2 games in a row now where you have Spurs and you have Brighton. Brighton were actually coming in pretty good form. They just had that win over Man United, before this. And so big moment for Everton. The only negative here, and it is a pretty big negative, is they did lose. I think it's Oriol Mangala to an injury, and it looks like they're going to go out and get a midfielder. They've been linked to a number of moves now, and they possibly lost Calvert Lewin. And it is unfortunate for that because I mentioned how after the Spurs game last week, one of the kind of exciting things about that, at least that first goal, was it felt Calvert Lewin was maybe back. This had been I maybe jinxed it. He had gone all season actually being available. He hadn't really been able to score. He hadn't necessarily had his confidence, but for Spurs, he had a lot of confidence. And you were just wondering, well, maybe David Moyes was able to get a whole lot of magic out of Antonio. Maybe you could see something similar with Calvert Lewin, and apparently he did. He did, feel something. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how long he is out. But right now, I don't really know if I would trust someone like a Beto or Mando Broja, because they haven't really been able to show it through the whole season how much they can just lead the attack on their own. They're maybe going to get Dwight McNeil back. It looks like they're about to add some other attacking talent in Carlos Alcaraz, formerly of Southampton. Apparently, he had been playing his football in Brazil with Fluminense. It looks like they are about to possibly do that deal. So that'll give him at least someone that can play a little bit more higher up. He's not really a number 9 per se, but he can be kind of a second striker kind of guy. When he was in Southampton, the season they got relegated, he wasn't the reason why. He actually, he showed up for them. He looked a talent. So we'll see if Everton are able to get that over the line. We'll see what they're able to do, with that midfield because right now, no Mangala. They're kind of stretched a little thin there. They just got James Garner back, so that could maybe help them a little bit. But those are just kind of just minor things, I guess. You can well, they're not really minor. There's a pretty important things. But at least the broader point is Everton are on the back of a 2-game winning streak now. Life under David Moyes is quite good, and so we'll see if it continues this weekend as well. And then another team that bounces back is Newcastle. Newcastle did not really enjoy their time with Bournemouth. They were able to beat Southampton 3-1. Probably what you would expect. The kind of surprise here is they were trailing in the beginning, but Isak with 2, one with PK, and then another with a very good finish. Gets a pass from Tonali or Bruno Gomes, and it's just an unbelievable first touch to set him up for the second. Just an all around striker, really. So he continues to be on hot form, and then Tonali was able to add a third. So not a ton of drama there. We get to Sunday, and we did get a little bit more. So Aston Villa and West Ham, played each other, and they played to a draw. And I think the interesting thing coming into this game was, a couple of weeks back, I think it was maybe Graham Potter's first game in charge in the FA Cup. Aston Villa played this game and it was relatively comfortable. I think they ended up winning 2-1. That was a game that Onana, I think, scored, and there was no Onana here. That was a game maybe Aston Villa had, maybe the more of their back line at least a little bit more healthy. And what happened is Aston Villa already had injury issues coming into this, with Paul Torres being back, and then they lose Tyrone Mings in kind of the 30 minutes into the game or so, and they didn't have anyone to replace him. And what happened is they brought in, I believe it's Ian Matson, and they moved Digna to basically be their second center back. And so you had Ezri Konsa, you had Matty Cash, who normally kind of struggles defensively too. Cash can do a whole lot of things with the ball, but defensively can be got at a little bit. You only had really one center back there. And as the second half went on, despite being really outplayed in the first half, West Ham came to life a little bit, and they pounced on some of that defensive security. West Ham came into this also kind of being a little in limbo. with their squad as well, with a couple of issues at the back. I think Marvel Panos wasn't available because of the red card. They didn't have Tadibo in this game, and at the back three was to it was Sioux Fall was back there. I think it might have been Cresswell for another. So they only had one center back to play in this game as well. So it was interesting to see that. But if you're a West Ham fan, you went from basically dreading how the rest of the season was going to go to actually somewhat being upbeat. Where you figure if you can get Jared Bowen back, and I think he is about to return for them, you can see something maybe brewing here. The second half. Aston Villa, their press was kind of non-existent. They weren't able to necessarily get in behind, and it was one of those cases where Unai Emery, made some changes, and the changes didn't necessarily work in their favor. And West Ham, for West Ham, it did. Wan-Bissaka was able to get upfield. It looked like West Ham were doing a pretty good job to be pretty direct, and they were also doing a really good job to just get the ball forward, cross it in, make Aston Villa, defend that in the box, and they get the rewards. What they, it's a ball, launched in, whether by Wan-Bissaka or maybe it might have even been by Alvarez, back post, and Emerson is right there, who was about to actually be subbed out before he scored that, and after that, West Ham actually had a chance to even do more. In the game, they brought in Danny Ings, and Danny Ings, an actual striker, actually allowed Kudos to play a little bit of a different role, and Paqueta to play a bit of a different role. And Danny Ings nearly hit the post a couple of times, and then it looked like West Ham actually did win the game after it looked like Paqueta had scored a tap in, only for one of those players to be offsides in the build up. But Aston Villa just continued to have one of those weeks where. Games after Champions League, it seems like in second halves they just continue to get leggy. It felt like they were leggy versus Monaco. But to be fair to them, they were able to rebound where they just had a big win with a big second half over Celtic to cement their place for the Champions League and not have to do a playoff. I don't believe so. And they just made some news by selling Ollie Watkins. I mean, not Watkins, John Duran. Oddly enough, so. Very, very interesting there. And then probably the most boring game of the entire season. I don't necessarily know if I'm actually being wrong about that. Is Manchester United and Fulham. This was a game that was happening during the NFL, kind of playoffs, and I was a Washington fan, so I was trying to watch that instead. I didn't miss much. Very, very little scoring opportunities for both teams, but United do go on and win, and that is the most important part at this point. They get a shot from distance that deflects for Lisandro Martinez. He continues to kind of pop up with some big goals for them. And they had a timely block from Toby Collier, who had come in, where it looked like Fulham had equalized with a header at the last minute off a corner kick, and Collier was there to be the hero of the day. But yeah, neither team really had any kind of real threat on goal the entire game. So hey, you one of those where you don't play your best, but you at least get some luck to go your way, and Man United will take that. Fulham probably have to be kicking themselves a little bit because like similar to Man United in some respects, both teams were actually not playing terrible until they got to the final third, and then it felt like their football play just turned off. Everyone is making poor decisions, so that's where we are with that. Brentford and Crystal Palace played on Sunday as well, and this one feels like it's always a draw when these two teams play. Two teams in London. Uh, but here, Brentford were able to beat them in the first week of the season, and they're able to get the win here. Thanks to a bit of a lucky break. There was a PK that was awarded to their way after Nathan Collins, a center back, found himself in the box, was able to draw a foul. Brentford are pretty good at doing that, just getting bodies forward in any way possible. And Collins actually does that in open play. He finds himself in the box at times. So he's brought down, and it's a foul. And then Embremo steps up and misses the PK. But he is allowed to take it again due to encroachment by Mark Gahey, and it's the right rule. But it's one of those where Gahey does affect Embremo, being able to react and basically do a tap into the empty net because the ball bounced off the post and basically went right back to Embremo. But I think it's one of those where I kind of would like a law to be saying that the first man to touch the ball can't be the PK taker. I've just always kind of felt that way. But it's not likely that rule is ever going to come into place. So Mark Gahey is in the box when Embremo is after Embremo's kicked it. So or as Embremo is kicking it, so it is encroachment. and he is the reason why, and Bremen probably doesn't get the rebound to go anyway. So basically, it's a retake, and he's able to score on the retake. It's not like the miss, shattered the confidence of his teammates. You saw Damsgaard, and you saw, I think, Weisse, celebrating right before he even kicked it on that one. So they figured, the ball's in safe hands with him, at least usually, and it was for the second time. And then they get the second goal with Kevin Schade to kind of give them a little cushion to make it 2-0. Very brave here. It's a cross in by Damsgaard. Schade just sticks his head into danger. He gets clattered into as a result, actually. And it looks like, before this, they were saying he might be linked to a late Dortmund move. It seems like there's like this little bit of flirting between Jamie Gittens, between Bayern, Dortmund, and I think Bayern have Matthias Tell, who's been flirting to move with teams. So Bayern want to try to get a replacement there, and it looks like Dortmund have been flirting a little bit to look at Kevin Schade's way, where before he joined Brentford, he was in the Bundesliga, and German youngster as well, German youngster that has some pace to him, and he hasn't always necessarily. Worked out at Brentford. It's been one of those kind of weird things where you don't necessarily know if it's the right fit. But for being as young as he has started to come into a little bit of his own. So it'll be interesting to see if Brentford hold on to him or not. I don't know who Brentford would go to get a replacement. They still have Lewis Potter, where they're kind of playing him a little bit out of position. They're still trying playing him at fullback, and Rico Henry is back. They just brought in a Kyobe, the signing from Fiorentina, I believe. So they're about to improve a little bit there. So it'll be a couple moves to maybe watch on a little bit there. And then the only thing to say, the end with this game is Palace did get one back, where a youngster for theirs as well made a debut in. So you have Ebreche Eze or Eza on their team, and you have this player from Millwall, Eze, which is going to be really annoying. So I might have to say Ebreche to distinguish the two. It's one of those where he does well. At the first, I think it's Ebreche Eze has a ball into the back post, and then I think someone heads it basically to the other post, and there Essa is making a run where he basically has a tap in, and he does well to score the tap in. So not the end of the world for Crystal Palace. Really good moment for at least the youngster that they got from Millwall. It's always good when you bring someone from the championship, and they score at 5 minutes or so making their debut. So youngster as well. I think they said 19, so someone to maybe watch. Palace are pretty good at doing that. Finding someone in the championship and making something out of them. They did that with Elise, and they did that with Eza when they were both at Reading, a few years back. So, a couple, maybe a name to watch, going forward. And then the game kind of nothing really happened outside of that. It wasn't really a game for the open play. Both teams were trying, pretty hard. It wasn't necessarily like there was a lot of standing around, but apparently the wind was kind of wrecking a little bit. It was not necessarily the best conditions, so it wasn't really the best for viewing. It did kind of end entertaining enough. It was frantic after that second goal, after that first goal went in for Palace, where only one goal game, and they were sending some bodies forward, and they got a couple of dangerous free kicks and corner kicks that Brentford had to deal with, but they were able to hang on, and good result after being able to bounce back what happened with the Liverpool. You're always worried a little bit about that when a team plays so hard and they put everything into it, and then they against a big club, and then they kind of have one of those like last minute kind of heartbreaks that break against you. You don't want that to carry over where one loss becomes basically two or multiple. So that didn't happen with Brentford. They're able to rebound, so that's good for them. And then we get to this will probably be the other game. So I'll touch on Nottingham Forest, their game, in Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth, the City and Chelsea game, and then probably Spurs and Leicester, because Spurs are kind of I don't really know what to think about them at the minute. So here it's one of those where they came in and they played probably one of the if well Spurs are in a pretty bad shape, anyways. But coming into this, Leicester were as well. You figured it's one of those where if a side was going to break out of a rut, you figured this would probably be both teams are playing the team that they would like to do it with. Spurs also squeezed to get the first goal with Richarlison. It's a great Pedro Porro cross. It's one of those where you just figure, they could do this more more often. To be honest, he's got such great delivery. You like Pedro Porro being a little higher up. Uh, and they deserve that lead. The Leicester goalkeeper was kind of here a little bit of that second or that first half, but the second half was different because so like the first half ends and you felt Spurs are kind of comfortable here. Leicester aren't really able to get a whole lot of attacks going their way. You don't really remember Vardy's name coming up by the commentators, and then the second half happens and everything changes, and it's one of those where uh, defensively, they are a mess, but also in midfield, they're a mess. And a side like Leicester was able to able to capitalize. So El Khanous gets the ball in pocket of space where there's just nobody within 20 yards or so, and he's able to carry the ball into a danger area, and no center back is able to close down on him either. And that continues to be a theme a little bit here. And then he just beats the keeper with a really nice hit, and then Vardy made it 2-0. Uh, and then you're playing from behind, maybe the one criticism I have of Ange Postecoglou here is he takes off Richarlison. Maybe Richarlison was suffering from cramp. I don't know. And he brings on Mikey Moore. But after that, they move Son to through the middle, but they didn't have a striker. They didn't have like anyone to really be the focal point for any kind of crosses or really anything. And you don't remember Son being able to get in behind. The only real threat Spurs made after that were a couple maybe crosses or they got something on a free kick where they hit the post. Uh, so it was pretty bad. I mean, Leicester were coming into this with pretty rotten form. And again, injuries are one thing. I'm gonna do a bit of a rant here. It's one of those where injuries are just injuries are what they are. You don't want to necessarily make an excuse. Not many people have had the injuries that Spurs specifically have had. But that said, you look at where people have been able to chart this. They are the most intense side out of possession and in possession, and what that means is they work their socks off to try to win the ball back. Uh, and then when they do, they try to get forward quickly, as quick as possible. They like being direct, and it's very exciting, and it leads to lots of goals. They're very high when it comes to XG created in the entire league, and their expected points is supposed to be much higher than it is either, as well. And you can do this when you have your first choice, defense, your first choice keeper, um, and they're just missing. They're missing the entire back line. In this game, they played Archie Gray, and they don't have Jed Spence anymore. Apparently, he's hurt now. But it was interesting. They had someone like Reguilon, and he still played Gray. But this game, it was Ben Davies, and it was Dragic again, and it's just that's just not a back line that should really be starting for any club that's trying to do anything but avoid relegation. To be honest, you don't want to necessarily be harsh, but it feels like that's kind of where you are. So in this one, they also the midfield was non-existent. You have a Betancourt who's not really a six, not really a holder. Betancourt's really good with the ball, and he can be kind of an advanced, kind of attack-minded, box to box maybe midfielder, but he's not really a DM holder by himself. And you're letting the people you're pairing him with. It was Sar on one end, and I forget who the other. It wasn't Madison. I forget who the other. Was it Gray? I forget who the other player was. Uh, and they basically could get caught leaving Betancourt. So someone like Basuma maybe not being used was a bit of a mistake. And so and that's kind of how a couple of the goals came. They were able to get Betancourt, or they were able to get Sar or whatever to to run away from where, or to basically chase the ball a little bit, and they're able to slip a ball in behind where again the high line just can't catch up. So that's where we are there. I do want to focus a little bit more on that game. The other thing to talk about is you mentioned how once you bring Richarlison on, someone like a Lancashire was on the bench, and I was wondering, you got to take a risk. You're bringing on Mikey Moore, who's 17. Play the kid Lancashire. Apparently, in the Euro game, Spurs were also not necessarily having the best of luck, and then Ange did go to his youth, to his academy system. He did bring on not just Mikey Moore. He brought on this Ajahe guy, to play on the right, and he actually did a pretty good job. I think he got one of the goals, and then I think it was they brought on to another kind of a youngster kind of attacker. I forget his name too. Was it Stewart? And I'll actually look that up. And he's responsible for really getting the first goal, and then he actually leads to one of the assists. And so that's kind of one of those things where sometimes you just need you just need a body with a profile. Whether or not they're actually going to be, the finished article or not, you need to just kind of trust them when you get into that situation. And so, they have a center back that I think is 17 that a lot of their fans want to at least see soon. If it's going to be, if none of the other guys are going to be able to show up. I think in that Europa game, Mickey Van de Ven actually did make a return, so they might at least get a little bit of a reprieve there. Still no Romero, and I think actually they lost Dragic in that Euro game. Anyways, so it continues to just kind of be hell. You do wonder if maybe the strain is a little bit too much. The demands that the coach is asking. Apparently, you could look at maybe the how they're doing their training regimen. Is it too hard or not? Scarlett, Dan Scarlett, I think was the striker. I did look it up. So that's where we are for there, and I do like I said, it's one of those where and I think to the other player that they were missing was Madison, and it's another game where you just see sometimes while he hasn't always, been, the biggest cup of tea, for a lot of the season, he has showed up and he's been pretty big when he has been played. He was, kind of the player of the game in their last Europa game versus Hoffenheim, and came out that he apparently has another injury and he might be out for a couple of weeks. So they have a lot of injuries. No Madison, no Solanke, their striker. No Udogi, no Van de Ven, at least until yesterday or when that Euro game was. No Romero, no Vicario, they're their keeper. That said, you're not asking Tottenham to beat Man City here. You're asking them to beat one of the weaker sides in the league, and especially that back line with Vestergaard and Ralph Faes. So it's just because Spurs didn't offer any kind of threat there to end that game. So that was where the struggles were. And then to end, we have Newcastle beating. I think I had Newcastle and Southampton already. So that's kind of where we are there. And to get started, we will move on to Bournemouth and Nottingham, and this is going to be a little bit of a deep dive. I'm pretty excited about this because one, Liverpool are about to play Bournemouth, so it's been good to kind of read up a little bit on how they've been playing. But two, just I think we're seeing something happening in all of the world of football, and I've kind of alluded to that a little bit prior. So to get started, we have 2 weeks in a row where someone on Bournemouth gets a hat trick, so that's kind of funny too. Yeah, it was Clivert last week, and we get Watatara here. He's kind of playing a little bit out of position, but though I'm not sure if that is the case because the second goal he has, he gets he's showing pure number 9 instincts, and I think one of the third goals or fourth goals that they have, it's a number 9 instinct as well, where it's poacher's instincts. But the second goal, he jumps like a basketball player with the kind of ups that he gets, and he just flies over Murea, who maybe isn't necessarily the tallest of stature, but he does Murea is pretty good in the air for his size. And Watatara is like a foot higher in the ground. There's just no chance, and it's a great header. It's a great cross also by Kluivert. Kluivert gets the first one, and then he helps create the second, and then that's all you needed to do for Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest did as well as they could defensively, but they didn't offer any kind of real threat going forward. And before Forest were even actually able to offer any kind of response, Bournemouth did get the third, and it felt like they got the third, and then that was chalked off. And the third, the goal that was chalked off was maybe the best goal of the entire weekend. But then they do get the third, where Watatari basically runs around the Forest center backs, and they just they're able to find the corner, and then mentioned the fourth how there's a shot that comes in. I think it's Tavernier that shoots it, and then he Watatari there for the pickup, and then Semenyo towards the end, and they actually I think was only 1.7, so the 5-0 was a little misleading, but at the same time Bournemouth can't stop fighting in the net, and the way that they were playing, it was definitely deserved, and so we get started with their lineup, and it's Cook, Zebedee, Dean Howson, and Kirkez, and these are a lot of names that people are going to be hearing for transfer rumors after the end of the season. I think this entire team maybe is going to be rated, or at least is going to be linked to being rated, and we sometimes see that. Now, it doesn't always happen, We'll see if Bournemouth can actually, maybe sneak into a Champions League spot. Who knows? They do have a whole lot of injuries though, so I don't know how long they can continue playing like this. And then in midfield they have Ryan Christie and they have Tyler Adams, USA, and Adams hasn't always been able to get into the side because usually it's Cook and Christie, and Cook is actually doing a job, playing out of position. A lot of guys are playing out of position here. Cook is doing a really good job at right back, and Tyler Adams come in. He's doing a pretty good job to play next to Christie in midfield. 2 games in a row, he's played well. And then you have David Brooks, Kluivert, Semenyo, and Watatar, and so. And that's kind of where we are with that. And then with Nottingham Forest, no more changes. We have Oli Aina, Milankovic, Moeo, Nico Williams, and then Anderson and Ryan Yates. Ryan Yates returns. Elliot Anderson had a pretty good game. Last week he was someone that was highlighted. This one it wasn't the same game. And then we had Joe Da Silva, Morgan Gibbs White, Anna Langas, and no Hudson Odoi. That possibly it actually did factor in. And then Chris Wood up top, like we normally see. Nottingham Forest normally kind of line up the same way. And the thing about this is we finally saw a side that really did know how to beat it. And so to get started here, we have an early Forest chance. I think it's a Langa. Just kind of start the game off. It's pretty decent strike, side netting, but long ball from Sells, leads to this, so they at least force something. But Bournemouth then respond quickly with an attack of their own. They also go long. It's Christie or it's Cook that gets high and then has a pretty good cross into the box, misses everyone, but then finds Kirkes, the other fullback that's able to play high upfield, which is a staple how Bournemouth play. They're not afraid to get both center backs or both fullbacks high and wide. But the other thing too is you're seeing it's 4 minutes in or so now, and you have Dean Howson and Zabineri around kind of the 35-yard line of Nottingham Forest, just knocking it around for fun. And you see it's risky to do this because if they turn it over, then obviously there's a lot of space to make those runs in behind. Uh, and there was a moment where Housen actually plays a poor pass that's picked off, but it's only Chris Wood back there, and they kind of figured Chris Wood isn't going to beat them for pace, and Zabineri actually is able to to win that sprint. And after that happened, this happens 4 minutes in the game. That was probably validation that unless Forest switch it up and they have maybe Morgan Gibbs White to be up there, or they have Alanga playing higher up, this isn't going to be a problem the way that Bournemouth were trying to set up. And so here we go with the first goal, and it is Kluivert. And one of the things both managers spoke about was in the post game. The thing that was most important to both was who was going to get the opening goal, because Nottingham Forest, in a lot of these games, had been the first to get the opening goal, and so when that happens, that allows them to kind of play out the more conservative kind of approach where they play out of possession, they sit deep, they wait for the counter. Bournemouth getting it changed it up a little bit. And it comes from a lightning counterattack where they win the ball off Forest. I think Forest have a throw in. I think it's David Brooks who pokes it off Yates, and then there's some clever passing here to get out of danger where Christie, with a really nice turn, passes it to Tyler Adams, who quickly finds Kluivert wide open, middle of the field with a really good through ball. And then Kluivert basically is able to carry the ball 50 yards upfield, where Nottingham Forest, the protection is Ryan Yates, and he is the one that's lost the ball earlier, and he's out of the picture. And there's just no one from Forest is able to close down on him because it's Kluivert that has the ball. That means everyone on Bournemouth's side, whether it's Semenyo, whether it's Watatar, whether it's Brooks or it's Kirkes, someone making a run ahead of him, Bournemouth have options. And so the Nottingham Forest defense doesn't really try to run out to Kluivert. They try to mark those options, and basically they do. And Kluivert sees that and is able to run all the way up to the box, and then he's just able to beat the keeper from range. Similar to what he did last week versus Newcastle as well. So it's one of those where. You give someone with the freedom to take those shots on that can get it on target. They're going to take it. It's another thumper. But the thing that I really want to touch on, and I'll circle back to this, is Nottingham. When Kluivert gets the ball, he's not looking to just quickly pass the ball to someone ahead of him. He's not trying to keep possession. He could go sideways. He could recycle it. He gets on his bike and he actually starts to ball carry, and you're not seeing a lot of managers that play this way, and that's what I'm talking about. Where I think we're seeing a little bit of a change where it can be risky. Kluivert maybe loses the ball, and then you can possibly have a counter the other way, but there was no one really near him. And Nottingham Forest was able to actually run at Clivert, to stop him because there were options ahead of him, as well, and you didn't know where a Clivert was going to go or what the final action was going to be. It was unpredictable. And that's kind of like the new kind of theme here is a lot of the games these days have become predictable. You can kind of predict where someone's supposed to be, where a run's supposed to go, or a pass is supposed to go. This is a situation where it wasn't predictable, and Bournemouth, when you watch them, aren't really predictable. So that unpredictability is predicting is allowing them to be predictable in how they finish or how they're putting away teams because teams don't really have an answer for them, at least so far. And so setting themselves up, and they're going to double down on what I mean by that a little bit later on. We do have a couple chances though for Forest to respond. There's a Yates volley, forces a Kepa save, decent. Then there's Elanga kind of head something down to Gibbs White. It's a reaction shot, just misses wide. Possibly could have gone in. I think it's sleeping past Kepa if it stays on target. But we're kind of getting more into the game, 20 minutes or so here, and the out of possession shape is really really brutal. You have Chris Wood by himself, and he's worth. You got two center backs that are just really high, high and wide. Chris Wood's never going to poke the ball, this way unless it's just a really terrible pass and really. The two center backs are just really comfortable with the ball at their feet in Zabineri and Dean Howson. And what you're seeing here is you know, Forest are trying to block off the passing lanes ahead. They're trying to block off maybe a Tyler Adams or Ryan Christie or maybe head with a Semenyo or someone else. And so the center backs have a lot of time on the ball, and there's a lot of space actually for them to carry it. Sometimes that can be dangerous. Sometimes it can be a trap. But Bournemouth were really good at just kind of avoiding that. They're also, pushing their fullbacks to be really, really high, and so that's dragging Alanga and Jota Silva to go with them. So again, there's a lot of space for them to just keep kind of ball carrying, and for a lot of that first half, a lot of Bournemouth's kind of first possessions were starting almost inside the Forest half of the field, kind of like like I said, towards like that 35-yard area. Uh, and we're just starting to see where they don't really have to like push things to really to get started there. And so when you're just allowing a team to just kind of set up camp there, that's asking your defense to do a whole lot of defending for a lot of that game. And we start to actually see some chances come out of it. So we have Christie here. This is sustained possession again. The commentator's asking how Bournemouth probably need to be a little bit careful not to play into a trap. Forcing a pass that can lead to a turnover. Howson here fakes a pass and then kind of ball carries all the way into the penalty box. This is a guy that is going to be linked to a whole lot of clubs, and I'm talking not just in England, maybe in Spain. He came from Juventus and just kind of a youngster. But I don't really understand why he left. Uh, but I think he could find himself in one of the big Spanish clubs in a couple of seasons if he continues to progress because he's 6'5" and he's a unicorn. He's really really good with the ball at his feet. Tall. He seems to be very very good defensively as well, and he's a gem on the ball, and it feels like he can play in a high line. Just he feels like he can fit a lot of what teams want. He's also 2-footed, and he can do that kind of Van Dyke kind of long pass, cross field switch, pass on a rope too if it's needed. But he can also ball carry, and you're seeing a lot of his skill set start to show up. And Willie, ever since he joined the starting 11 full time, Bournemouth have been an entirely different team. So you can. It's not just him though. That partnership with Sabinieri has been very good too. So, and they're doing something similar with Liverpool, where they do with Van Dijk and Kanate, or Arsenal and Saliba, Gabriel and Saliba for Arsenal. We're just playing very, very two, center backs very high up. You're not worried about anything behind. You're asking them to do a whole lot of things to solve a lot of puzzles with the ball at their feet. Maybe necessarily Arsenal don't do that with Gabriel and Saliba, but Liverpool do with Van Dijk and Kanate. So I do think it is interesting how they're about to, that game's about to happen, and Liverpool are going to see a mirror image in some respects of in this Bournemouth team. Uh, but there's also that's kind of just running down a little bit with Housen. Uh, there's a moment where the few times when maybe they're out of position or maybe there's going to be some danger. Adams and Christie are doing a pretty good job to run back and stick a leg out for a tackle, eating a card if needed. And then we have another chance here where Semenyo here, another good opportunity. Bournemouth are patient with their build-up and it's triangle passing to get the ball into the Forest penalty area where Clivert then gets himself free, gets the ball and then plays it out wide to Lewis Cook. Again, the point man to start this off. Clivert makes a run then drags someone with him, and then Christie makes a run as well to join in from behind, and he gets the ball, and then Christie finds Watatara. That's blocked off, but then Semenya wins the ball back and basically dribbles into the box, looks for it to get a shot off, and Sells is able to block it. And then the Forest half, there's the first effort really on goal came in the 41st minute. So they had a couple like nearly moments, as kind of like a quick response, but they didn't really do anything sustained. And then they finally did get something towards the end. There's a distant shot by Gibbs White. Maybe it's heading into the corner, but Housen is there to head it away. And there's maybe a chance also to where it looks like they have a chance to counter with Jonas Silva chasing the ball in space, but it's stopped also by Housen beating him to the ball. So again, what a half for that 19-year-old. So we get to the kind of the halftime here, and it's one of those where it was just 1-0, but it felt like Forest were lucky it wasn't more. And again, just their decision to sit back and was backfiring in my opinion. But maybe they didn't just want to give space for their front line to attack as well. But I just thought you had Chris Wood just all by himself, and you had everyone else that was just Chris Wood had to cover 45 yards between himself. You needed Morgan Gibbs White at a minimum to press alongside Chris Wood, and they started doing that a little bit in the second half. They took way too long to do that, uh, and it was just too easy. It felt like Bournemouth had a spare man a little bit when you're able to just bypass Chris Wood like he's not really there. And, if again, just so many times where Bournemouth were able to start so many attacks inside the Forest penalty area or kind of outside it. Uh, and I do think it was maybe a mistake just kind of not scouting the Bournemouth team a little bit. The one thing you can say too is when you're sitting so far back and you're supposed to be a counter team, uh, you can't just play like that the whole you have to, that's asking to make a whole lot of sprints without the ball, and it's asking you to do a whole lot of defending without it too, and it just didn't really suit Nottingham Forest because in possession, Bournemouth it felt like they were able to deal with the counters, and then when Forest did have a spell of possession, it felt like anytime Forest were able to get in behind, there was always someone following that run. So there's a lot of really good discipline by Bournemouth too. And so we get to the second half, and the narrative is set. Bournemouth, you get the first goal or the next goal, it's probably over. If Forest get it, maybe it's game back on. We have an early chance here for Watatara. It's one name I haven't really mentioned yet is Django Watatara's name, and that is about to change. We have a cross that just comes from wide, and Watatara does well to just kind of win the header, and it's goal bound. It's right to Sells though, so it's not really a whole lot of danger, but it is a warning shot that one Watatari can be a threat in the air if a cross does find him. And we do get to the second goal where he scores it. So despite Forrest actually somewhat starting the second half okay, a couple free kicks, a couple corner kicks where they're able to at least be a little bit dangerous towards the goal. Bournemouth get the all important cushion instead, and it comes from one of their corner kicks. It's defended okay. Nico Williams has a header to clear the danger, but Bournemouth have the bodies to win it back. Kirkes is on the ball. He floats a great ball forward to Clivert. Kirkes is another player that's going to be linked to number of clubs. He already has. I imagine that's going to continue in the summer as well. And he plays a great ball upfield to Clivert, but Clivert then has a lot to do though. Nico Williams is somewhat there, and Clivert's able to freeze him, and then he's able to get a free cross in. So it's one of those where Clivert, kind of freestyles here a little bit. If the cross in the beginning maybe isn't on. So the responsible thing is to maybe recycle it. Take it back. Pass it backwards. Make sure you have possession, you control. Where you can get maybe numbers in your favor instead. That's how we've seen teams play in this position. Instead, no, Cliver decides to uh, uh, take Nico Williams on 1v1. Does a nice little feint to fake across. It gets it onto his other foot, and he pitches a beauty of a ball that floats in, and it flights over Milinkovic, and just uh, you know, uh, Moreo isn't really Lisandro Martinez height, but I think he's 5'11" or 6 foot, 6'1", and Watatara just towers over him. It's not really fair, and he's just able to head that home. Um, And then there a couple of minutes later where Brooks finds Semenyo, and it looks like they're going to be another one that's maybe blocked by Sells, but it's another example here of Bournemouth winning the ball back and instantly being allowed to break up field where a few passes in, they're able to force a dangerous attack. And that's another thing when you watch this Bournemouth team, they're really good at winning the ball back, and a few passes later, they've got a lot of numbers able to get forward and to be near the box. They're lightning at that now. Can you manage that the whole season where you have an injury crisis? I don't necessarily know, but at least for right now, it's working. And it's a lot of trouble for defenses to handle because they attack in so many numbers, you don't know how they're what one's going to do. There's a lot of unpredictability when they attack, and again, that is a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. And then we get to the goal that was ruled out. I did want to highlight this because this was superb, really. Messy like in some respects. I don't want to go overboard, but it is one of those where, like, if Barcelona scored this a couple of years ago, you would have it would have been everywhere. Only Bournemouth scored it, but Kluivert, the man of the moment, gets it to go in the net. It just doesn't count. But here we have, so they're able to keep winning the ball back, in the Forest penalty area because they have so many numbers high up. That's why I mentioned them, liken them to Liverpool. Liverpool do this a lot too. So Kluivert gets on the ball in the box and just does a little dribble, basically goes through like 3 or 4 legs, just really clever, just quick feet. Finds Watatara for a 1-2, and then he just finishes the move. It's ruled out for an offsides. It's the right call, but it is a shame that the football move wasn't rewarded. But Forest looked flat and leggy. I mean, they're late to every clearance, they're late to every duel, and then Cliver just dribbles around legs with just really clever feet and balance. And it's just one of those where you don't see this kind of take-ons and dribbles, especially in the box. It's not like there's a lot of space to maneuver this here, and it just shows clever, shiftiness and lower body of gravity and all that stuff. But it doesn't count because it is offsides. But it doesn't really matter because Bournemouth, shortly after that, do get the third and killed off the game. So poor by Dominguez here, and he's just he comes on in halftime for Ryan Yates, and Gibbs White also doesn't do that great here. Tyler Adams intercepts the ball and plays a forward ball to Watatara, who then shows the quick feed himself. The Forest center backs again just were early, early on were embarrassed by Clivert. Doesn't do well with Watatara here. They kind of overrun the ball, and then Watatara is able to find the corner. It's the second assist for Tyler Adams, and this is one of those where online people were kind of laughing at him just kind of getting 2 assists, where the attackers kind of did all the work. The one thing I'll say is one of the more kind of underrated things a midfielder can do is release the ball on time, especially when the run is on. Uh, Sometimes managers want this to be a little bit more secure. Maybe hold on to the ball. Maybe again go backwards or go sideways to kind of recycle things again. No, instead he plays a picture perfect ball for Watatara to make them run it behind. Before he plays a great forward ball. It's only an 8-yard pass for that first goal, but he plays it on time for Clivert. And it's it's not going to say Tyler Adams creates the goal necessarily, but it's not insignificant. And it's one of the things where you sometimes don't you feel like maybe the criticism of him in the past has been not being hesitant to release that ball forward. So it was really good to see him come into the side, and for the last couple of games now, he's been playing well. So really good to see for US fans as well. And then because he didn't really have the best Copa America. He just came back from injury. He really hadn't played senior football for almost a year and a half or so. It felt at least over a year. I don't really know how long it had been, but he looks. It's taken a while to get his body right, but at least for the moment, he looks good. It helps also that he's not necessarily playing midfield by himself. He's got a partner in Christie, and neither of them are really defensive minded midfielders per se. But both are doing a pretty good job of just kind of recognize when to drop or when to advance. Recognize how to play with each other, how to play off each other. Do 1-2s, whether or not uh, to hold in place or to when to actually gang tackle and to double team. That partnership is working quite well, and it also again helps that you have that protection in the back there. You feel as like you can maybe make some more kind of individual kind of risky kind of moves. So That's where you are for the third, and then we have Forest finally starting to press a little higher up, and they are starting to get a couple turnovers there. But by now the game's kind of too late. I feel like Nuno waited too long to move Gibbs White to kind of a third attacker. He took Joe Da Silva off, and then I think it's Nico Williams from Mario and a center back. They went to a kind of a back three, pushed Ole Aina higher, and it was just a little too late. And Forest get the fourth goal with Watatari again. Here, Dean Howson steps in front of a ball, showing the good defensive instincts. Wins Bournemouth the ball back, and then Cliver gets on the ball again. There's no one in Forest anywhere near him. Cook then makes a runs alongside Clivert. Cook does a really good job to recognize when to make that bombing run forward. As a right back that's played a little bit out of position, but Cook's got some pace to him that you see here. And what it does is when Cook does it, he kind of drags someone to go with him, and then Clivert just makes another 40-yard jog with the ball. So it's another moment when again Forest just allow someone to have a free carry against them. Um, and then from there, Bournemouth do a couple of 1-2s, just kind of toy with the ball once they get into the box. And eventually, Tavernier, who had since come on, has a pop. Saltz has been really brilliant all season, and here is just a really poor spill. And maybe it just the concentration is not there. This is it's already a 3-0 kind of game, so you maybe can give a little leeway here. But it's not the best keeping by Sells here. Just spills it right to Watatari's path, and Watatar does pretty good striker instincts to keep on sides. He anticipates when maybe the shot comes, and he stays on sides, and then he's the first to run to where the ball is rebounded. And then Semenyo caps it off, getting the fifth, where he just gets into the box and just no one gets close, and then he passes it into the corner. Uh, and so, Bournemouth was 16 shots and 10 on target. Forest did have 18 shots, but only 4 on target. And just the 4 big chances for Bournemouth as well. The speed, again, that they were able to go from defense to attack. Forest were caught on the back foot. And the impressive thing as well is, Forest, they don't really play in a deep, it's more kind of a mid block, you can say. Uh, the space isn't always necessarily there to get behind them. So usually teams really struggle with this. So how do you get through that? How do you unlock that when Forest have this kind of block formation? They're playing compact, and the idea is to not really let anyone to really be open. Essentially, Bournemouth unlocked that with 1v1 ability. Taking players on, taking with some ball carrying, and that'll be kind of the theme that I really do get to. We're seeing a bit of a different game here. Bournemouth win with 283 passes. That's probably where they usually are. It's not a high passing Bournemouth side. Forest with 251. But so it's not the Pep Guardiola school of thinking where you need to keep the ball just to keep it for 600 passes or so. Now over the course of the season, can they continue to play this way, avoid injury, and avoid the heavy legs? I don't really know. But again, just for now, it's working. And so there's an Iriola quote about ball carrying, where he thinks it's a great way to unlock defenses, especially, and you're seeing it with the center backs as well. And it's refreshing to hear a little bit. It feels like the game there's been a lost art in this. Players with the license to ball carry to take players on because no, lo and behold, if you lose the ball, it's the end of the world. There's a transition, and the game is all about limiting transitions. In this case, Bournemouth are fine with having transitions because if a team is able to transition and attack, that means one, if you can put out the fire, you can attack yourself. So it's creating chaos in a game that's supposed to be organized and slow. It's speeding it up. It's almost a sense of in basketball when you're doing a full court press, the idea is to really try to force the offense to play a little bit higher up. To maybe force them into some mistakes when you're like losing. The idea is try to speed the game up and try to see if they can make some mistakes. Going that way, try to be aggressive. Uh, it's kind of a similar thing. So like that is the fun thing about this. Like one, you're given license to to take players on and maybe be unpredictable. And even if you lose the ball, it's not a negative. It opens things up. It introduces unpredictability and chaos back into the game. And again, a side as gifted and athletically dominant as Bournemouth is, anyways, it suits them. So, there's been a risk averse kind of part to the game that's been adapted in many circles, and it's led to a situation where managers focus a little bit on positional discipline. That's a word that you hear, zonal passing, as well. You can't necessarily leave a zone until you pass a certain way here, and we're seeing that being destroyed now. We're seeing teams have freedom. It's not just Bournemouth doing this. I think Hansi Flick and Barca has been doing this as well. The way that they've been giving Gavi a free roll, uh, and the way that they have their attackers have license to kind of do a whole lot of stuff. The only player that really has positionally stay stagnant is Lewandowski for Barca. So, here Bournemouth aren't even playing with a striker, you can say. Usually they have Evan Nilsson, or even before it was Denez Unel, and they're doing this too. They have a lot of injuries now, and they're able to just kind of plug players into to different kind of maybe for positions that wouldn't they wouldn't always find themselves in. But they got quality, and if you've got people that can be pacey, and you got people that are good with the ball at their feet, you can play them anywhere really. So we're kind of seeing that a little bit too. We're seeing some flexibility here. So the tactics here, Forest gave Bournemouth the ball. So how would this wasn't like Newcastle or like a normal side, or like the game with Chelsea where Bournemouth can expect to not necessarily be the dominant team with the ball, where they can just kind of try to be a high pressing team and try to win the ball back themselves. How would they react against a team that would like to let them have the ball? That wouldn't really like to open themselves up and to allow for a transition game. How would they handle that? And the answer was they created one themselves. They forced it. So they get it happens off a throw in. They win the ball back, and then once they do that, once they see that Ryan Yates is completely out of position, they go. It's once you see that the ball is in front of the ball is in a spot where you have numbers in your advantage, more than the other team has. That where you basically when the other team is outnumbered, essentially, that's when you go. You've got numbers advantage if you keep forward that way. So many teams are so against. Once you have the numbers in your favor to actually go, a lot of it is just is it the right time? Maybe we should recycle. Maybe we should go backwards. It's sideways. Play more a little bit more safe. Why don't we keep the ball a little bit? Get some touches. They don't play that way. Uh, and the other thing too is when Clivert does that, he has options ahead of him. It's important to have options ahead of him. Otherwise, Clivert has to beat like 3 or 4 people by himself, and if he doesn't have options ahead of him, defenders are able to focus on him, and the shot's probably blocked. So it's important for that as well. So they have the setup, and they have uh, a number of attackers making those runs. It's Kirk as the fullback is making a run, trying to get upfield ahead of Clivert. So they're committing numbers forward as well when they attack. Uh, and in the end, really, a long shot and for the second goal, it's a brilliant cross and a header that kind of breaks the game open. But again, Forest were playing with fire. The way that they were just allowing the ball near the penalty area the entire game. Then the third comes over, and that really is it. So, how is Bournemouth playing? You have Lewis Cook at right back. Challenge accepted now. A couple weeks in a row where he's played Anthony Gordon and then Elanga, done a fantastic job. And in this game, he picked up an early yellow card, and it didn't phase him going against someone like Elanga. And I really like what he's doing. He's staying wide. And when he stays wide, that allows someone like a David Brooks to play more inside. Who he doesn't really. David Brooks isn't really this. He's one of the few players that doesn't really have a whole lot of pace to get forward and to be kind of this transition threat. But what he is he's clever with the ball. And once you get the ball near kind of the final third, he has a pretty good eye for a pass. We saw it versus Newcastle. He set up one of the earlier chances for Watatara, and he has a couple really good crosses and passes and link up plays in here. And he's come in. He's getting a chance now because a couple injuries now, but he's taking advantage of it. And he's just running into the free space in the middle of the field whenever he can, and he's hard to mark. And it's interesting to see them kind of you'll give him a little bit of a free roll. We're seeing Tyler Adams come in. Because Cook's playing it right back, it's given him and Christie a chance to kind of play a little bit. And then the front line again, everyone, other than Brooks, baby, can run and interchange. Semenya, Watatara, Clivert, Tavernier when he came on as well. You have Sinistera that can come back from injury, as well as Evan Nilsson when he gets back. But really, the secret sauce is Housen and Zabanieri. And it helps them win the ball back higher because they can play them high up. You can play your fullbacks high up because you don't you got 2 center backs that can handle stuff 1v1. Uh, and the other thing too is both have responsibility. It's not just Housen. In the second half, it was kind of Zabanieri where he was taking some license to kind of ball carry into space to try to, get the ball past a couple of Nottingham Forest players. Where again, it's one of those where if you're doing the man marking stuff, you just have Chris Wood, by himself, and then you have everyone else that's just kind of trying to just basically stay with a man and close out passing lanes. But if you've got an offense that makes forward runs, well, the defense is going to follow that, and that just creates just a gap for someone that's brave enough to to basically run into that gap where the space has been created for them, and you're doing that with center backs. And again, usually teams want that. Usually you're asking center backs to get into a position like that because eventually they're going to make a pass, they're going to make a play where they're uncomfortable. They're going to get they're so high up, they're going to feel tight. They're going to make a risk and turn it over, and then Nottingham Forest can probably. Uh, Advance a little bit, and that wasn't happening. Both Zabaneri and Housen were making really good decisions on the ball. So that's another thing that's important of this too. So uh, I liked what I'm seeing. Especially these NBC commentators talked about it. They're showing a different side than usual. They showed a patient side here. When they get the ball, how can they break down a team that's sitting in a block? And they're showing with the right runs and passing, you can still create spaces even when it's not supposed to be there, especially for clever attackers. Um, and again, the interesting they're doing it with a lot of injuries and players out of position, and you're seeing Spurs having injuries, and you're seeing a lot of other clubs, and it's not an excuse for Bournemouth at least so far. But we'll see if they're able to continue this. So at least it's been a really good January and December month for Bournemouth, and coming into February, they're not far out from a Champions League spot. So we'll see if they're able to pull an Aston Villa like last season and sneak in. Now, the one thing I can say is Bournemouth do not have an Ollie Watkins last season with the 20 goals, but they do have two center backs that can they might be able to ride a little bit of a run here. We'll have to see. It is certainly intriguing, and the entire team's intriguing. Areola, the coach, the manager, is intriguing. And mentioned how there are a lot of names here are going to be hot in the summertime. It feels like Areola is going to be hot as a manager as well. And the only thing I'll say about the Liverpool game coming up is because it's kind of similar here. Usually, when teams match up, similar, the team with better individual talent usually kind of shines through. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens or not. Liverpool have not had a lot of success going away to Bournemouth. Recently, it was only a couple of years ago when I think it was after the 7-1 game. They went back to Bournemouth the very next game and they lost that game. I think Watatari even was the difference maker. So different Bournemouth team. I would think that was Gary O'Neill's Bournemouth. Uh, we'll see what they have in store. Either way, I'm expecting that to be a blockbuster game for the neutral because Bournemouth do not really possess the ability to just kind of play the keep ball. So if they get to a point where they have an early goal or they have a lead, they're gonna be a team that actually tries to get second or third goal. They're not gonna just kind of sit back because they don't necessarily seem like they have the ability to really do that. Maybe they can keep the ball a little bit with their the center backs, but Kepa's gonna launch it long. You would think, and then the midfield or the attackers they're not really possession minded kind of players. Not That's not a knock on them. For the way they're built, this is a brilliant way for them to play. But it's just because of that, both teams are really going to try to. It feels like when they win the ball back, they both are going to try to go forward. So it's going to be pedal to the metal for both of these games, I think. Uh, and then with to end with Nottingham Forest, it's a bit of a coming to earth moment for them. See how we're doing for time. Uh, yeah, that's probably what I would expect. It's one of those where it's still a positive season, but a couple of times now they're not able to hang on to the ball long enough. That hurt them. They don't have the best out of possession structure. Usually it doesn't really hurt them, but here it did. There'll be better days. Bournemouth are kind of a team that's unique at this point. Not every team has center backs that can stifle wood, but also not every team plays this way. Usually teams again where a pass isn't on or space isn't already there, teams don't force it, or the managers don't want it to force. And, usually when teams just can't, they can't really break down lines, and usually you see teams that get frustrated, and usually they make a bad decision, and usually Forest are able to get that turnover and able to counter and nick a goal. Here, Bournemouth weren't able to, allow that to happen. No Hudson-Odoi, do think hurt them. As kind of an attacker, someone that does have that take on ability, but also you would allow Elanga to play on the other side of the field. Uh, eh, Hudson-Odoi is also able to just kind of, he's clever with his runs a little bit more than maybe Joe Da Silva. Maybe he would have, pressed a little bit differently. It just feels like they missed him a little bit. Ask someone to do something individually, hold on to the ball, play people in, things like that. We'll see if, but Forest also, nothing to downplay their season so far. Just Chris Wood not being visible hurt them. Not the best day for anyone in midfield. Gibbs White, Dominguez when he came on, Yates, Elliot Anderson. None of them were really able to keep onto the ball or at least win it back. And in the back line with Moreo and Milenkovic or even Sells, just an off day. Really, that's all there is. And then with Man City and Chelsea, kind of already spoke about that. So I don't necessarily know if I need to speak a ton about what actually happened in the game of as far as what I've already said. One thing I do want to kind of focus on a little bit here is it was a different game than what we're used to seeing from Pep. It's a good way for them to bounce back after the thing with Paris. Uh, but it's one of those where it's kind of a tale of two halves here because we effectively saw two city sides. First half, you have Koshinov and you have Akanji being wide. You have Silva and Kovacic kind of taking turns, making it a back three, just kind of you take on the duties being on the ball. You have Gvardiol and Nuis being high and wide as your fullbacks, but also just being extra attackers essentially. And that allows Foden to maybe play a little inside you. That allows Marmoush to play inside a little bit. In the second half, it felt like Nunez and Gvardiol were playing a little bit deeper when the game was still going out of 1-1. Uh, and you really, at times, you just had Holland all alone by the offense, as himself, as kind of the offense, especially when Marmoush was taken off. And it felt like the idea was just kind of, play, be very, good rest defense and just pray Holland can do something for you. And really, both kind of worked in some respects. But we didn't see the way that City were playing in the first half was not the same in the second half. There was also, Kushinov came off for John Stones. So maybe they didn't feel like, John Stones had the ability to kind of play as high up as they basically need someone to protect John Stones defensively. That's possibly what it was. 15 shots and 6 on targets, 6 big chances though for City. To get started with Chelsea a little bit, one thing to kind of talk on is this is a City side that had just gotten spooked out of their shoes in the midweek in Paris by a team just doing a full press, and you have a youngster that's just making a mistake in Kushinov. Uh, it was just weird how Chelsea laid off after that first opening 10 minutes or so. It was very cautious, but it was cautious out of possession, but I was also you're playing a high line as well, so it just feels like you're back asking for trouble here. It wasn't just Holland. Marmish was getting it behind. There were a couple moments when Gvardiol was actually getting it behind himself, where even before Gvardiol got the first goal, Gvardiol was maybe City's most dangerous player. And what they were doing is it felt like Chelsea were trying to pitch Colwell and Chalobah, basically on Holland, and so that allowed Marmoush to just kind of make these runs by himself, and that was taking Reece James' attention. And you have Gvardiol that was trying to join in, and the problem here is Madueke was not following Gvardiol, and that's been a little bit of a theme a little bit for Chelsea for some of these games. Sancho was happening with Sancho in the Crystal Palace game. I remember when Fulham and Chelsea played a couple, near Christmas. That was a similar thing too, where the fullbacks were able to make runs, basically going unmarked because the front the Chelsea attackers on the wide play on the wings were not following, and basically you were allowing a 2v1 situation on their fullback. It's not necessarily a 2v1 here; it was just kind of a free man, and that was happening a lot in that first half too. So. And then the other thing that was kind of negative was Marasco took Jackson off. Jackson wasn't really doing a whole lot, but after that, there was really no threat as well. So Nkunku came on, and just there was no one making runs. Palmer gets the ball, and who's making a run for him? Uh, it's just a lot of ball to feed action, just nothing of significance. I was wondering, Mark Gahi, is supposed to be maybe someone to think about, but he's come in for some of their Europa games or Conference League games. But that said, Chelsea were in the game, and then Sanchez has this mistake, and that's the theme of the game, really. Yeah, City probably did deserve it on the days, but they played better after the first opening 10 minutes or so. But Chelsea also had a chance to get a two open or two up. Um, After as I mentioned, how Cole Palmer was in behind, he had a square ball, and then Jackson just wasn't didn't take his left foot. He tried to cut it back and take it get it onto his right foot, and by then the chance was gone. But Sanchez makes a mistake, and it comes after the Wolves game where he made a mistake as well, and he just continues to make mistakes. And then here, Reece James back in the squad, and he was not enjoying, playing with Omar Marmoush making his runs, and feel like Marlon Gusto being benched maybe wasn't the best idea. But it was also the best idea was not, asking Colwell or even Chalobah to handle Holland. Chalobah was kind of the one player for Chelsea that was somewhat, holding himself high. He wasn't he was actually doing a pretty good job to anticipate when Gavardio was getting in behind and to stop some blocks and crosses. Uh, but that said, he is the one that also gets beats for that second goal. But really, you look at Chelsea and just the lack of running is an issue. Whether it's Palmer, whether it's Jackson, whether it's Sancho, Madueke, Enzo, none of them put in a shift defensively. Palmer was lively for the opening 10, 20 minutes, and then just you didn't really see him after that. But Palmer gets the ball and he's got no help. Wingers that want the ball to their feet in Sancho and Madueke, they aren't wingers that want to get in behind. So Palmer doesn't have the support. Enzo isn't making runs off the ball either. And neither were the fullbacks, essentially. Levitt Colwell did not have his best day as well, but just the lack of runs off the ball is starting to be a thing, really, both defensively and offensively. The manager has talked about how it feels like his players are starting to be tired a little bit. This was a very weird game where it was still a 1-1 game, and Chelsea in the second half did do a pretty good job to somewhat kind of keep the ball a little bit more, but they were never going forward with it. There was never kind of any intent other than to just kind of keep the ball, and it just feels. Uh, I don't necessarily know if they're being found out, but or they're kind of being uh, they're losing energy or what it is. Uh, I do think it's one of those where Enzo and Caicedo to that midfield pairing hasn't really worked out the entire season. But the other thing too is Caicedo, for as good as he is, or Enzo, they're missing. They don't have that physicality when Roman Lavia misses games, so that's kind of showing up a little bit in some of these as well. Sancho plays in instead of someone like a Neto, maybe someone more pacey and directness. But Neto came on and he didn't really do much when he came on, anyways, as well. But that was also when City had the game kind of won, where City didn't really have the wing backs or the fullbacks being high. I just think it was a mistake. So maybe a chance missed. It's not the end of the world for Chelsea to lose to City, but they are starting to get into a bit of a dip. And you look at who they're being linked to as far as transfer business. It's players like Garnacho, which I think they need defensive help, and I think they maybe need a keeper help. Someone like Kepa on Bournemouth, I think is still a lone player. I don't know if they can recall him or not. I don't really know if Kepa necessarily solves a ton of things because Kepa has some issues too. But that's just kind of a that you look at this Chelsea side where they can need to improve in the summertime at least. It's probably a keeper. So that's kind of where we are there with City. Uh, I'm just wondering how repeatable this is. Bernardo Silva did, I think, the most running I think I've seen from him in 2 seasons. Gundogan and Kovacic probably played their best game, and apparently they played really well in their Champions League game recently as well. After playing probably the worst game that they had played in Paris, uh, Chelsea are looking to play these runs in behind. Gundogan and Kovacic, even Ederson having this ball over the top. They're trying to play those runs when usually Holland makes those runs and he doesn't get the ball. Is Pep going to be able to repeat this? Is he going to allow this to happen? Is this the new Pep, or was that just a one time thing? The Bernardo Silva thing, is that how repeatable is that? Will teams be able to kind of focus on that a little bit? Mateus Nunes keeping his width, doing well when he gets forward, but it feels like we saw with Barcola. You can go at him a little bit defensively. I think we saw that in the Champions League game as well just recently. Sancho did not try to take him on. There was no fear factor. So yeah, a couple ways to kind of look at this here. Gvardiol with license to kind of be upfield. It feels like he's better when he's going forward, but defensively he can be got at a little bit too. And, we'll see what Arsenal are trying to do with someone like Martinelli versus Gvardiol. I think is maybe the matchup to watch for, at least in that Arsenal City game. We'll see if that pans out or not. The other one is how is Pep going to play with Armor Marmoush, running inside or to do these runs in behind with Holland, kind of being a decoy. Does he use that in the Arsenal game, or does he hold off? He's got Grealish, he's got Doku, he's got Savinho came on and apparently was man of the match in the Champions League game. I don't think they had Marmoush available, so maybe that's why we saw Savinho. But uh, you know, and how does Foden, can fit in this? One of the things that interesting about how City lined up in this game was, it started off kind of a 4-2-3-1, where you had Foden supposed to be on the right, but really what happened is because Mateus Nunes was able to just run all the way up and almost play as a winger as a fullback, that allowed Foden to play a little bit more inside. Which is what he really likes doing anyways. It was interesting to see Foden was basically played instead of Kevin De Bruyne in a sense in this game. We'll see if Kevin De Bruyne is benched for Arsenal as well. Um, but you can do that in some games by playing your fullback that high. Usually you're allowing you a lot of space to maybe attack on the channel. But the interesting thing was in this game, it was that Koshinov guy making his debut. And again, after that 10 to 20 minutes or so, he was very good at owning that. He showed he can make up a whole lot of ground defensively. He was able to run and beat Jackson to a loose ball. He was able to just own anyone trying to run down that side, and he was really good at making recovery runs into the box. So I don't think John Stones can do that. So we'll see. We're going to get a sense of how Pep is going to think about this game by basically looking at how he lines up with in that Arsenal game, and that Arsenal game is coming up. So the positives, that Kushinov guy, he found his footing. And Marmoush does look a talent as well. It looks like they found someone like to be their Alvarez, someone that tries to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more unpredictable. Which is again, it's not something that Guardiola usually plays with. Usually they play with someone that likes being a little bit more kind of steady in their possession. We'll just kind of put it that way. So uh, we'll see what he has for the Emirates, and then with Arsenal and Wolves, kind of already talked about that. I think what I'll end with is the Spurs, the Spurs and Leicester game. Actually, yeah, I've already kind of talked about that, so I'll probably just kind of end there. We've got I'll try to do a little bit better job, this next coming week, where try to get something out a little bit earlier than I have. It was weird with the Champions League. That kind of just took the schedule out. Watching the NFL playoffs, or at least I tried to watch the Washington game. It was harder to get everything sorted out. I guess I will end with the Tottenham and Leicester game, just kind of to end a little bit, not necessarily in the game itself, but just how it happened. We'll see how we are with injuries. The Madison. One thing to kind of say is, should Ange keep his job? I think that the thing that they need to remember about is if they do get this senior core players back. I don't really know how long they're supposed to all be out, but they can probably still be favorites to win Europa League. Uh, they still have a chance to actually beat Liverpool and advance to a League Cup final. So I do think it would be the wrong idea to at least move off him now. But one thing this is showing me is he's stubborn. He's not necessarily been so. I don't necessarily like that. There are a couple of games now where uh, it's what I don't like is they're not really consistent in how they play. So it's hard to really nail down a couple of reasons why they're dropping so many games in a row. But he is stubborn. He's stubborn in his post game. Um, and like the other thing is he doesn't really change things. And and what I mean by that is, obviously he's not really changing in his approach and how I guess they're training, because you get injuries like this. You can have a couple by misfortune, but I not when a whole squad has these muscle injuries. It's not like they had a ton of players that were out that were really featured in Europe in Euros or in the Copa America. So it is a bizarre thing. But one thing I think you can look at is the squad building. It's maybe a missed opportunity. They spent so much money on Solanke to kind of be this finished article, this finished striker, and I didn't hate the idea at the time. I actually really liked it, but looking back, you had a lot of holes elsewhere. In midfield, they don't have a holder to have some protection in front of a back line that is vulnerable if you don't have Van de Ven. And Van de Ven, you figure is going to be always iffy with his hamstring and with his injuries. He was iffy in Germany, so that's not surprising. Um, and it just feels like if you only going to have certain capital to spend, was it really the right option to just spend a whole lot of it on a kind of a luxury kind of striker when you had, squad issues elsewhere or on the wings. You 1v1, you only have really Son that you can rely on. Kulusevski is more kind of a 10 now. I think that was kind of an issue, but to go back to the other thing, the thing that I'm really concerned about is the patterns of play are weird, or the game patterns, I guess, are weird because you don't know what to expect game to game. So it's here. What I mean by this is it just feels it would be easier to fix if I could just see, okay, they struggle versus low blocks. Oh, okay, they can't beat a man 1v1 individually. Okay, they only struggle versus teams pressing them. They're fine when they have the ball. Or okay, they can't keep on to the ball without making mistakes. So you can't say, oh, they're actually pretty good with the ball. It's just kind of the opposite. It's always just feels like they're their own enemy, making passes from the back, but not even that. Sometimes they have games where, when they're in position, they can't defend themselves, when they're in good positions. Midfield wise, one week they can hold on to the ball and pass well. Other weeks, it's a complete dumpster fire. Here, Betancourt was played, kept running out of positions. Archie Gray, I'm wondering, could you use him as a 6 instead of your left back? Could you find a way to maybe be more of a block shape? There's 0 midfield protection right now into a back line that's vulnerable. It's vulnerable without Van de Ven. Now, you get Van de Ven back, maybe that changes things a little bit. I mean, Ben Davies isn't necessarily great, and uh, neither is Dragic, and it looks like Dragic actually, possibly picked up an injury himself. So I don't really know where you go from there. Bergvall has come in. That's the player I was forgetting about, and he's great on the ball, but young, and he was getting played out of position. He got the interesting thing to me is they're doing a thing where it's you're getting caught a little bit with what Man United were doing last year with Ten Hag, and I don't want to say it's the same thing as Ten Hag and Man United last year, but I'm starting to see slightly something similar, at least in this game, where you have wide gaps in midfield. And the lack of a number 6 that can eat up ground or at least hold is a problem. The slow back line, so you have a disconnect. You have space between the front line, between the midfield and the back line, especially if a team decides to press. And that's where Man United were making mistakes last year, was they had the front line that was pressing really high, the midfield that was supposed to kind of hold in place a little bit here, but you're getting you're asked to manage a whole lot of space because the back line is actually going backwards themselves. So it's that slinky effect, and you're seeing that. At least you saw that in this Leicester game. Was here that Spurs were doing the same thing. The back line is in retreat mode. They're not able to kind of play next to the midfield to offer protection. And when El Canus gets the ball, it's just way too easy. When Ayew gets the ball, it's just a cross into the ball, cross into the box for Vardy, and it's a really good cross by Andre Ayew. So it's one of those things where sometimes it's better to actually sit back and to not press forward if you're not going to have everyone doing it. Sar leaves. Sar and um, uh, Sar and Bergvall both leave to go try to press high, and they leave in Betancourt by himself, and Betancourt goes in for a challenge and he loses the ball. And then Pedro Porro goes into a challenge, he loses the ball, and now you're kind of donezo. And so it just individually that's how you concede, and it's a problem. They've gone. I think it's 8 games now without a win, at least in the league. They did beat Liverpool, and it's just, you that happens when you have a whole lot of issues in the squad. And it's a squad with kids, Gray and Bergvall and the Kinski, the young keeper keeps making mistakes. Brandon Austin, when I watch him in the Euros games, he actually plays pretty well. But again, it's like it's paying that much for Solanke. Someone like a Carlo Moani maybe was available out there, the other thing too is Bournemouth got Dean Howson for I think 20 million off Juventus. It's possible they could have looked in that direction. They've got they know Van de Ven has an injury history. They know Spurs actually have a pretty good relationship with Juventus. Maybe Housen would have been available. Who really knows? Uh, so that's kind of just where we are there, and then with that's kind of just how we're end. I guess we'll kind of just put it that way. We'll see how this coming week ends, and until then, USA Squatty and stop recording.